Shalom Aleichem, everyone. We're about to start. One more minute, and we are good to go. All right. We're just sharing this page with other people as well to make sure we reach as many as possible for this web yeshiva broadcast. Great. This is an old niggin of mine. I haven't sung it in a while, but I was thinking about it this morning while we were davening Hallel. Let's see if I can remember it. זה היום עשה השם, נגיד לו ונשמח בוי. זה היום עשה השם, נגיד לו ונשמח בוי. זה היום עשה השם, נגיד לו ונשמח בוי. זה היום עשה השם, נגיד לו ונשמח בו. זה היום עשה השם, נגיד לו ונשמח בו. לה 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 ונשמח בו. זה היום עשה השם, נגיד לו ונשמח בו. לה 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 לי לה 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 לי לה 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 לי לה 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 לי לה אוי לה לה לי לה 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 לי לה 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 לה. La la bo. Ze hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha bo. Ze hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha bo. La 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 li la li la li la li la la bom 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 ay 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 li la la li la ay. All right, I can't hear you through the computer, but I'm sure you're singing with me and giving me great harmony. Shalom Aleichem to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on Web Yeshiva. Thank you to all the students that we've been learning with for quite a while, long time now already. I want you all to know that, I want everyone here to know that it's given me tremendous chizuk, meeting many of you over the last few weeks of traveling, those that we're privileged to learn together, and it fills my heart with such excitement and actually good vibes about the new modern age of technology, and especially social media, where we know that there's so many things that prevent us from feeling like we're growing while being glued to screens. And then you have moments like here where it's actually, you kind of feel, I don't know if as a pun on words, you feel less guilty. That word guilty is what we're going to be speaking about a lot tonight, guilt. And I just hope and pray that now as we're entering the month of Nisan, and that we're going into Mamish, marching towards Pesach, and starting the new Sefer, the third book of the Torah, the book of Vayikra, that we find new ways of giving ourselves strong koach to hold on tight to this ride, because it's getting wackier and wackier. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. So in any event, what we'd like to do this evening is sink our teeth into a very, very, very beautiful Torah from Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach about this book of Vayikra, Sefer Vayikra, this third book which we're beginning this coming Shabbos, please God. It's something very interesting that I'm sure those of you that grew up in Israel, I'm not sure if it's outside of the country as well, but definitely here in Israel, the tradition is that children begin learning Torah dafka with the third book of Vayikra, which seems to be the hardest book, the most puzzling book out of the 5 books, and I would dare to say, even the least exciting, especially after coming off Sefer Shmot with so much excitement, so much happening, to then begin Sefer Vayikra, which is mainly dedicated to the whole world of sacrifices, purity and impurity. We find ourselves in a really interesting way, beginning with the children with learning Dafka Sefer Vayikra. And every year, as we learn something about the parsha, about parshat Vayikra and the book of Vayikra, we attempt to try to understand why Chazal, why our sages told us and wanted the children to Dafka begin learning from here. Now we all know, and we see this constantly in our lives, that when something's ingrained in a child, for better or for worse, at a young age, so no matter what happens to them later on, that thing which is ingrained to them at a young age lasts with them, it remains with them. Like we said, for better or for worse. Sometimes it's things we wish we never ingrained in a child, subconsciously or consciously. And yet sometimes there are things that a child picks up on that the parent, as a parent, is in utter amazement and shock, that they remember something that happened to them or that they experienced or saw at the young age of 3 or 4, and then you see that phenomena take place over and over again later in life. And you see that it's things that began at a young age. I see this already with my 7 and 6-year-old girls, where certain things that they picked up on at the age of 2 or 3 sticks with them. So it's also very special for me, as my 6-year-old just began this year learning Sefer Vayikra, as she began learning the Chumash, and my 7-year-old was learning it last year. What we're going to be doing tonight is be learning a very deep concept, a very simple but deep concept, which will hopefully shed some light and give us a beautiful understanding as to why the children really do start it from here. But before we go into the text, which I'll present in a second in the first comment, or the second comment, whatever comment is available for me, I want to discuss something that many of us have a really difficult time with, and that is the concept of regretting. Emunah, the world of belief, of faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Master of the world, is on the one hand the most simple thing in the world, because all you got to do is just believe, and on the other hand it's the most complicated thing in the world, which we have to restart our engines almost on a daily basis in order to plug into the concept of what Emunah really is. Because on the one hand, Emunah means you believe, like the Gemara says, Kol ma de avid rachmana letav avid, that every single thing that God ever did was for the best. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, what else do we have? We have this concept of charata, of regretting things that we did. And regret is one of the key components of tshuva. It's brought down in the Rambam, it's brought down in many places, that the key component, it wasn't enough if you just brought a sacrifice and said, okay, this will be good for me, this will clean me up. A key component is I had to have charata. I had to have regret. And the Western world tells you regret is a very, very bad thing. You shouldn't regret anything. You should fully accept yourself, and you should fully and just accept every single thing that you did and that happened to you, because otherwise you wouldn't be you. Now, one of the most interesting things about this is that, let's go first to what we said before. If I'm supposed to believe that everything that God did was for the best, then why really should I regret anything? Why should I regret something if, that ended up leading me to where I am today? So that's a very simple question. It's a very good question as well. Now, I know there are things that I'm remembered of something that Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach himself said on the last Motzei Yom Kippur of his life. My friend who was there told me that he saw him late at night, Motzei Yom Kippur, a few weeks before he passed away, and he's swaying from side to side, he's shuckling, and someone says to him, Rebbe, what's going on? What are you thinking about? And Rabbi Shlomo repeated one of the Ve'al Chetz, one of the confessions that we say a few times over Yom Kippur. We say Ve'al Chet, one of the Ve'al Chetz is Ve'al Chet, I ask Mechil, I ask forgiveness from you, God. I want to repent over what? Shechatanu lefanecha beyodim uvelo yodim, which the literal translation is, I regret and I'm asking Mechila for all the things that I know I did, and also all the things that I don't know that I did. That those that I'm aware of, and that which I'm not aware of. Rabbi Shlomo said, V'alchet shechatanu lefanecha beyodim uvelo yodim, I'm doing averas for all the stuff that I knew about, and all the stuff that I wish I didn't know about. Regret is not a threatening concept. Regret, like we'll see tonight, is actually the most beautiful component of tshuva. It's a gateway, but we have to relearn the concept of what regret really means in order to understand this book of Vayikra, because the words v'hit vada et chatato asher chata, that he confessed over the sin which he had done, plays such a strong role in life. And again, together with the problematic matter of saying that everything that God did was for the best, and also regretting, finding harmony between the two, is what will please God be doing tonight. I'm just going to paste right now into the first comment, our text for tonight. And if you want, you could print this out for yourself as well. I would go print it out, bring it to the Shabbos table. Hopefully it'll be a lot of good stuff that we can take from. Okay. Vayikra, the secret of the Korbanot. Reb Shlomo says like this. Everyone knows that one of the key parts of bringing a sacrifice is regret. When I bring a sacrifice, I'm basically saying to the Ribono Shel Olam, I did wrong, and I regret what I did. Right? If you're so stuck up on being complete with who you are, and being sure that everything you did was perfect because it led you to who you were today, The problem with that is that you'll probably never end up bringing a sacrifice, because the essence, it's inherent, it's inevitable. Bringing a sacrifice means I did wrong, I regret what I did. But Rabbi Shlomo says like this, let me point something out to you. What does it mean that you stand before God and you regret something? To regret something means, Ribono Shel Olam, this is really not the way I am. This is already opening a lot of gates for us. Rabbi Shlomo says that regretting is basically saying, this is really not the real me. I can't regret something and say, this is the real me. If I see something that I don't like in myself, and even if it's the real me right now, once I reach that world of regretting it, at that moment, I remove myself from that which has defined me as a sinner, and I then am able to view myself as a real, what we call ztz'l, created in ztz'el enosh, created in God's divine image, and being what the Tanya calls chelek eloka mimal, a godly piece of heaven that's up there in a body down here. But we see already here with that one line where he says that when you regret something, it means you're saying to God that this is not really the way I am. This already changes our whole concept and outlook as to the art of sacrifices, avodat hakorbanot. So you could already see where we're going with this teaching tonight. What we don't want children to do is to ever define themselves as, or identify themselves with that place in them that they don't like. But what happens so often is that we're told about people, we tell people, look at what you've done, right? Meaning, look at who, basically that also means look at who you are. And when you say that to a child, what are you doing to them? You're causing them subconsciously to identify themselves with the bad that you pointed out to them. You know, it's amazing with the Ribono Shel Olam. With the Ribono Shel Olam, it's just an amazing, amazing, amazing thing that when he tells us to bring korbanos, it's not that you should identify with that which you're not, with that bad that you see in yourself. It's you identify yourself with that world, with that place where regret plays a really big key role, which we're going to be seeing tonight. Rabbi Shlomo continues and says like this. Imagine I love someone very much and I hurt their feelings. So when I say to them, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, what do I really mean to say? Basically, what I'm saying is that I'm not capable of consciously hurting you. I love you too much to ever do that. Some stupidity, some stupid spirit came over me, and I used words which I don't mean. So what I'm saying to this person is that it didn't come from the depths of my heart. That which hurt you, that which came out of me, which caused you to feel pain, that wasn't the real me. That did not come from the place that I'm closest to. But in order for me to find that place that is closest to me, I need to do everything I can to attach myself to avodat korban, which is the avodah of sacrifices. Because in Hebrew, the word korban comes from the word close, karov. And this is what we're working on in tonight's shir, and in all the shiurim that we've done in the past regarding Sefer Vayikra, is to understand how do we become close to what we really want in this world. And this is something that we realize that through regret, through realizing what I don't want, and having enough holy pride and holy guts to look at that which I don't want and say that, vidui, I find out what I actually do want. So Rabbi Shlomo continues and says like this, and this is beautiful. So what would end up happening is that you'd come to the Beis HaMikdash, you'd come to the Holy Temple, and you'd bring a korban, you'd bring a sacrifice. Something very important would become clear to you. What would become clear to you? I really did not want to sin. In other words, the fact that God told us bring a korban, bring a sacrifice, wasn't just that you're punished and now you have to pay for it. And now you got to pay a lot of money. You got to get yourself a cow. You got to get to Yerushalayim. You got to do a lot of things which involve a lot of hitbatlut, self-annihilation, v'chule. And so that you should do all the avodah, do all the work, so that what? You can then be yotze, you'll leave the realm of sin, because you did things that are, so to speak, paying for your avera. But that's the outside. That's not the inside of what's going on. Well, what happened to me through the process of bringing a korban is that I realized who I really was. That's the beauty of what took place when I would bring a korban. Sometimes people realize who they really are and what they really want after many, many years. And sometimes people realize it much sooner in life. Rabbi Shlomo says like this: sometimes we can live as something or as somebody for years and years, thinking this is what we really want. And then one day we wake up and say, I'm so stupid, this is not what I want. And this is not where I belong. Now, I've seen this happen to people at the age of 18. And in recent years, I've witnessed this happening to someone at the age of, I think he's 82. You see, in our years, in our concept of life and days, so you think that, someone that, once you're 40, you're kind of set in your ways, and then what, you're gonna realize then that you want to change yourself, you want to change your life. You got to do that only when you're young. That's absolutely Amalek speaking to you. This can happen at any given day and age, as long as the compassion of heaven is open for you. But to wake up one day and say, this is not where I really belong, and to do that at any age, unless you're regretting the place that you're in right now, you'll never come to that realization, and you'll never really come to the fruition of that which you've opened up, and that moment of inspiration. This morning I was learning that there's certain moments where inspiration is bad for you. Why? Because if inspiration comes around, inspiration to get your act together comes around, and you don't jump on that opportunity, your life becomes more sour than before the inspiration ever hit you. Because before the inspiration hit you, you were in the darkness, and you weren't even aware of how much light was right around the corner. So you didn't really feel so far. It didn't hit you so much. But once there's this hashra'ah, this inspiration that reaches you from somewhere, I don't know where, but it reaches you from anywhere, and you do feel inspired. And then what happens is you do act upon it. Or let's say you don't act upon it, you don't act upon inspiration. Then now you know that a certain world of light exists, and you get a reflection of where you are in your own darkness. In that moment, a real miserable person would say, I wish I was never even touched. I wish I was never even inspired in the first place. So first of all, I give you all a bracha, and please give me a bracha back to know how to jump, to know what to do with those moments of enlightenment, and to never let them cause more pain than joy, as we just explained right now. But a person who reaches that place where he says, this is really not where I want to be. So he hasn't gone anywhere. He hasn't changed his life. He hasn't made a bunch of resolutions and decisions. He's still physically in the same place that he was the second before he had this moment of inspiration. But what would happen at that moment? It's an incredible thing. At that moment that he says, this is not where I want to be, his whole world just opened up for him. And what the tzaddikim are kind of saying is that when a person would bring a korban, maybe at that moment he didn't change his whole life, but something happened to him through maybe hanging out with the kohen, no pun intended, but obviously, we're kohanim, but spending time with the kohen, or hearing a nigun of the Levi that would welcome you when you walked into the Beit HaMikdash. So yeah, you weren't changed yet. You're not a fixed person yet. But you have a sense of where you want to be and where you don't want to be. And when you have that, kimat esh lecha hakol, you almost have everything in the world. Rabbi Shlomo would tell this story about this, like we see over here, as a way out tragic example. There was a Hasidic yid, a Radomsker Chassid. He came to Berlin, and that was in Germany. Radomsk was in Poland, and he thought to himself, the Radomsker Rebbe, he's cute and sweet, but what does he know? I was actually thinking about this yesterday morning. I was in Germany, like literally right now. Yesterday I was in Berlin in the morning. I had to stop over there, and I wasn't walking around outside the airport, but when I had an aerial view and we were ascending, and we were going home to Eretz Yisrael, I looked at Germany, and for a minute I didn't think of Nazi Germany. For some reason, I thought about pre-World War II for like a few minutes. And I was wondering, what the Hasidic Jews that grew up Hasidic but wanted to rebel, what it was like for them to then come to Deutschland, to come to the more modern world, and leave their Rebbes behind and look at what was available for them then, and walk. And just, I looked at Berlin for a few minutes in those eyes, and then we have this story here where he talks about this Hasidic Yid, this Radomsker Chassid, and he came to Berlin and he thought to himself, well, the Radomsker Rebbe is cute and great, but what does he know? Germany is a different story. Here I make money. This is what, Geld. And the greatest thing happened to him. And his daughter was going out with a German officer in the army. And in those days, that was, so to speak, the greatest honor in the world. And when, I don't want to say his name, but when the Führer took over, so he thought, this former chassid thought to himself that the Polish Jews can still hold on to their Rebbe for help, but not me, because I have a future son-in-law who's a big officer. That's what this person thought. So one night, this son-in-law, this Nazi, walks in and started beating up this Hasidic Yid's girl, because there was a claim going around that Jewish blood is trying to seduce an Aryan. And when the father of this girl that got beaten up heard about this, that moment, it's like everything he went through, he stopped, he woke up and he started asking himself, who am I? What am I? So Rabbi Shlomo always asked, besides the beating that took place that night, besides obviously crying over his own daughter and going into that world, but what else did he experience that night? What else happened to him during those moments? What kind of, we call this like a he'ara, what kind of an awakening of awareness was taking place by this person? So Rabbi Shlomo always quote the Baal Shem Tov, and he said like this, the Baal Shem Tov says that sometimes we look at ourselves, but while regretting what we did, we become sad. Now, that happens quite often. And in fact, in the beginning of our learning tonight, I'm sure that many of you heard that word regret in the beginning. I wanted to turn this off and run away. And whoever's going to be learning with us online afterwards, ask yourselves in the beginning, when you first heard that word regret, what went on inside? So he says like this, such a deep concept, such a simple concept, yet so deep. We hear the word regret, we don't become happy. We become sad. Because why? We wish that our lives never led us to a place that we would have to taste something of regret. If my life was filled with goodness and I was doing good things in the world, then I wouldn't need to have to go to this dark place of regret, even if it's a good thing. And even if it's an essential key role of the mitzvah of tshuva, I wouldn't have to go there because I was on track and I was fine. But here he says, the Baal Shem says that regret usually has this sad connotation to it. Is that we begin to regret and we start becoming sad over it. But Rabbi Shlomo says, let me ask you, can you imagine living your whole life under the illusion, thinking that you did something right when really it was the worst thing in the world? So on the one hand, I'm sad that I made a mistake, but thank God that He let me know of it. I should be jumping for joy when that which I did wrong was revealed to me. Now, what stands in the place, what blocks this last sentence from allowing this to take place in my life? Again, what blocks me from being able to be besimcha that someone told me that I did something wrong? I remember the first example that I have of this in my life that I remember was the age of 9. It just dawned on me right now. When I was 9 years old, my family left Los Angeles for the first time and made Aliyah to Ra'anana. It was an amazing year. It was the summer of 1989. Now, I'm a Kohen, like mentioned before. How many times did I actually do Birkat Kohanim in my life up until then? Well, think about it. You duchen approximately, 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year in America, 4 to 5 times a year. And I'm 9 years old, so let's say I remember consciously doing it from the age of 6, 7. So I had only maybe 20 duchenings under my belt, right? But what I didn't know was that at a certain point, when the Kohen goes up to the bima, before the Aron Kodesh, and he puts the talit over him, I didn't know that you eventually have to turn around and face the crowd and duchen. So, and one of the reasons why I didn't know this is because my father was always the chazan. He was busy at the bima. I had to go up to the Aron Kodesh and do this. So I was never with him turning around. He actually didn't turn around. He was a chazan. He just went underneath his talis. So the first Shabbos we get to Israel, I going up there and I'm duchening with my father, and I didn't turn around with the rest of the Kohanim that go and turn around during the blessing of the priestly blessing. So after shul, someone came up to me, one of my father's friends, and he started laughing, not at me. It was really, I didn't think he was laughing at me. He just thought that it was so cute to see. He never saw this before. That I was, so to speak, standing there and duchening Hashem. I was like blessing God. I was staying towards the Aron Kodesh. But he told me, at that moment, I never forget this, my father's friend Yisrael, he said, and I remember saying to myself, like, I feel so bad that he's telling me this right now. I wish he didn't tell me this. But it really, how happy am I that he told me this, that now, already at a young age, I caught this and I stopped making a fool out of myself later on in life. That was just one example that I remember at the age of 9. But later on in life, people tell us that we're doing something wrong. So it's always about the way that someone tells you something. That's obviously true. And that's why, regarding the mitzvah of tochecha, of rebuke, it's a very, very hard matter. It's a very hard parsha, and most people are not at all on the level to really go there. But how happy are we, for real, when someone does point out that something that we're doing is off? Instead of really being so thankful that they're telling us that what we're doing is off, we sink into this place of either denial, despair, or depression. But what the Beit, and this is why we're longing for the Beit HaMikdash so badly, because when the Holy Temple was there, somehow the energy in the world was that instead of being depressed that I'm doing something wrong, that someone pointed out that I'm doing something wrong, I was so happy that I was told that I'm doing something wrong, because now I had an opportunity to do something right. You know what stands in the place of being able to be happy doing something right? It's one word. It's parshat, the ego. The ego, this thing called me, would rather if no one ever told us that we ever did anything wrong. Because that way, I'm safe. That way, as well, I won't develop negative feelings about myself. So it's a whole process here. And I wish we had, this is one of the moments that I wish right now we were together in the same room, so we'll try to do this as good as we can. To create a safe society and to create a safe atmosphere and a congregation, what would you really need? You need to be with friends that you trust and love enough and respect enough, and you're vulnerable enough in their presence that if something that you were doing was off and they told you about it, you would be happy. Not happy that they saw something bad in you and you're willing to shecht your ego, but literally thankful that you're becoming a bit more aligned on the right road. This is what it was. This was the point. Maybe this was one of the key initial elements which took place in the Beis HaMikdash. But we see by Bayit Sheni, I can't imagine by the Second Temple that this was still around. But what a beautiful world it would be if the surroundings that we surrounded ourselves with, both families and friends, was filled with relationships based on, I'm so happy that you told me what I was doing that was off, because now I have a chance to get back on track. The Baal Shem Tov explains that how we mess up with charata, with regret, is that I want to avoid regret at all costs. Why? I don't want to be sad about myself. I don't want to regret what I've done, because it's just going to bring me down. So I just got to focus on the good points and go from there. But really, if you're not going to have enough guts to look at those points that aren't that, I would say, warm, that aren't that on that, then what good is it? As I'm saying this right now, I feel like the only way to make this learning for real is if we stopped right now and really davened and prayed to the Ribono Shel Olam that we should be surrounded with such friends, and B, that we should have enough trust and emunah and real faith and bitachon, that when we do go to the place of being vulnerable and allowing people to show us where we were right, to believe that it will actually make us happy and that it will lead us to a lot of happiness, instead of thinking that it will lead us to a continued life of self-persecution. So Rabbi Shlomo says like this. We're on the third to bottom paragraph. So when a Yidla came to the Holy Temple and brought a korban, he brought a sacrifice, he might have walked in brokenhearted. But at a certain point of understanding the depths of regret, he would end up telling Hashem, Master of the world, it's clear to me now that this is what I want. Meaning it would be a simcha. A person would reach a place of simcha when he realizes in his heart that he really doesn't want to be part of something bad, and that the real him wants goodness. You know, most criminals were never instilled with the notion of that they want good things in the world. So they grow up thinking that they're people, that they themselves are people that want bad, and they can't help it. So they'll come with all the justifications and all the blocking and all the covering over the real issue at hand. But do you know how beautiful it is once you realize that you're a person that is really chafetz chaim? Mi ha'isha chafetz chaim ohev yamim lir'ot tov. That you love your days and you want to see good. That you're a person that wants to see good in the world. You want to see good things happen to people. When you walk around feeling like you're a person that wants to see good things happen to people, your life's a different life. You're so happy that someone came to you at a certain point in life and said to you, brother, it's a little bit off over here. I just remembered another moment, actually. I was in the mikveh in New York. This is it was April 2003, I think. I'm almost sure. Somewhere in New York. And I went with a very dear friend who I really respect. I respected then and I still respect today. And I began talking to him about holy things. And I saw that he wasn't answering. And I was a little bit agitated by it. So while we were leaving the mikveh, he said to me, the Baal Shem Tov is really big on making sure that you don't speak in the mikveh. And of course the ego comes and tells you, oh, man, he probably thinks he's holier than thou, or why did he make me feel bad? But what I realized afterwards, that this person really loved me. He loved me enough to tell me something that he hoped and prayed I would hear what he was really saying. So this is kind of similar to what was taking place when you'd come into the Beis HaMikdash. So now Rabbi Shlomo says, let's go even deeper. Sometimes we only know what we don't want in life. I don't want to be affiliated with that person, and I don't want this life, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do this. But what about what we really do want? This is amazing, the deepest translation of God is when it is clear to you what you really want. Not only what your kishkas want, not what your ears want to hear, not what your tongue wants to taste, but the deepest question is, what does your neshama want? What does your inside want? What does your soul really, really want? So on the one hand, it's great to know that those bad things that are bad for me, I want to stay away from. So that's great, and that's a very big mile, it's a very big level. But the next level is, okay, you know what you do. It's like someone that has gone out with 1 million girls, and now he knows, I don't want that type of girl. So it's great that he knows what he doesn't want, but is he under a chuppah? Did he begin his life? Did he begin building a family? Not yet. So to know what you do want is just as key. So when you brought a korban, it wasn't just that you had charata over the bad that you did, because if you just had regret over the bad that you did, you might end up in that somber place of, oh God, I feel so bad about what I did. It's so not what I wanted to do. But what would happen simultaneously when you brought a korban is that on the one hand, you knew what you didn't want, and you also knew what you did want. That was the beauty. That was the shleimut of the avodah. That's what would take place in the avodah of the korbanot. So you see what the Leviim would do, Rabbi Shlomo says? The holiness of their playing, when they would play in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohan, there's whole shaila if the nigun is ma'akev a korban or not. It's brought down on this farm, whether if the nigunim of the Leviim were played or not, if that would prevent a person from being able to actually bring a korban or not. That's how much of a crucial role the playing of the Levites played in the Beis HaMikdash. So Rabbi Shlomo says the holiness of the Levi's playing was that they opened all the gates of everyone's heart and everyone's soul to find out what they mamish wanted. So this answers the question. So how did someone not only know what they didn't want to do, but they also knew what they did want to do? That's what a nigun really does. We think there's it's a nice thing in Yiddishkeit to have nigunim. It's a beautiful Hasidic custom. It opens the heart. But it opens the heart for what? So if you ever see a chassid sing a nigun, you see that he's going through a transformation. So I've seen this by Lubavitch many times, where you see a chassid goes through a nigun of the Alter Rebbe, or any of the other tzaddikim, but obviously specifically the first Rebbe in Lubavitch, the Alter Rebbe, and you see that while he's singing the nigun, something happens to him. And he's more miyushav, he gets more settled in terms of his shlichus in this world. Because the nigun, the koch of the nigun has the power to, now that I know what I don't want, and I'm over here singing nigun to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, now I know what I do want as well. Now, let's tie all of this to the first question we asked. What does this have to do with the reason that we have children begin learning Sefer Vayikra at a very young age? That they begin learning Torah with the Sefer of Vayikra. As a parent, as those of you that are parents and those of you who will soon to be parents, what do you want for your child more than anything? What do you want from them? And I was looking at my oldest daughter today. I had to pick her up from somewhere. We were coming back from her dance. I was thinking about it. What do you want from them more than anything? You want them to have self-confidence. And you want them to think highly of themselves. Not in a haughty way, but in a real, carry themselves with pride as to they are, that they're proud of who they are and where they came from. It's probably what you want to do. It's probably what we want more than anything in the world. Now that doesn't mean you want them to be perfect. We know that they're not going to be perfect. But what we don't want to happen, God forbid, is that when they do stumble in life, and they do fail in certain things, that they identify themselves with the failure. And even if they end up regretting it, and realize that this is not who they want to be, but you want your child to have enough guts to also know who they do want to be, the real them, and to be proud of that. But what happens to us at a certain point in our lives is that we think that self-persecution is holy. We think that's religious. We think that's considered wanted and desired in the eyes of Hashem. Now, you might find if you think that about yourself, but how dare you or me or anyone to put that on our children? And this is what the act of the Korban would be able to, this is where it would be able to take people through, to get through a whole transformation in life. And perhaps maybe this is the reason why we begin learning this with our children at a very young age, is that they should never ever feel that regretting is something that's going to make them sad. They should be able to find in their hearts a simcha when they're told when something might be a little bit off, an opening of the heart. Now this doesn't mean right now that all parents that are listening right now, okay, we heard in the shir that we want our children to be happy when they're told that they're wrong, so let's do whatever we can tomorrow to tell our children what they've done wrong. God forbid. That's not the point. But the point is that hopefully they learn this on their own while they're learning Sefer Vayikra, that they learn it with simcha, that when they come to the psukim, v'hitvadu et chatatam asher chat'u, that the person that comes and brings a korban, he has a sense of of enough room in his heart to regret that which he did. Why? When he realizes that Avera took them away from who they really are, they regret becoming far from themselves. That's the whole beauty of it. That child ends up regretting anything in the world that ends up removing themselves from themselves, causing distance between the body and the soul. But in order for someone to have regret over actions which cause a distance between the body and the soul, you got to show the child how much the real them, is the most beautiful thing that ever existed. Because if not, they're never going to want to come back to the real them. So the Kohanim and the Levim, they had a big, big job in the Beis HaMikdash, causing this to happen for every Jew that would come bring a korban. No pressure, parents, but all of that avoda is on us right now. It's all on us. So Hashem should have compassion on us and teach us, give us over the tools to give over to our children how wonderful and how special it is to find out, to catch yourself when you were coming further from yourself, and come back with excitement and with the sense of shleimut, that whenever you come back to your inner self, tshuva, going back to yourself, that's a place you never ever want to leave. So we'll sing the nigun again that we started off with. Ze hayom asa Hashem nagid la v'nismecha bo. 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 Ze hayom asa Chodesh Tov, Shavua Tov, good Shabbos. We should all have a beautiful, beautiful march towards Pesach, towards the Parshiot in Sefer Vayikra, from a good place of good health.